We have a guest speaker joining us at 9:30. And so it'll be a hard stop. So we want to make sure we get there. Thank you, Tim. If you would call the roll, if you're ready.
Tony Brockman. Casey Buckingham. Here.
I'm here.
Christian. Scott Eichner.
Here.
Patty Fleming. Chair Gilbertson.
Present.
Dr. Hall. Superintendent Heideland. Hanson Hermanson. Eric Heimbach. Paul Hoptop.
Here.
Dwayne Iverson.
Here.
Aaron Kellum.
Here.
Josh Montagna.
Here.
Jason Kneifer. Senator Nolan. Heather O'Hare. Matt Olson. Kyla Owen. Quinn Queer. Sarah Schreiner. Here. Carrie Seekins Crow. Here. Jason Small.
Here.
David Smith. Commissioner Swanson. Here. Joe Teal.
Here.
John Williams. Jim Wanacott. Jason Yeager.
Here.
Hope Tony Brockman's online. Fantastic. Yep.
We officially have a quorum. We're gonna move, right into the workforce Pell conversation. And then we do have a hard stop at 9:30 as, Lewis Stewart from NVIDIA is gonna join us virtually. And we want to make sure we have that hard time for that presentation. So with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the workforce Pell approval process. Thank you, Aaron. Is there a second? Second, thank you. A couple of things, like I said, we will do public comments before we vote. So if you're online or in the room and you want to make comment on the approval process, we will hold some time for that right at the very end. And I think I'm turning it over to Commissioner Swanson.
Closed.
Oh.
We are going to turn it over to Crystal Armstrong, the Division Administrator for Workforce Service Division at the Department of Labor. And she's going to walk us through some of the workforce Pell information. A lot of this will be a repeat. Apologies that Jennifer's not able to join us today. She's ill. But we're going to call on our friend Joe to help us a little bit from the university system. And we're going to run through what is Montana's approval process. We'll run through the value added earning metric. And then if Dr. Hall doesn't make it in before that time, I'll share with you the meeting outcome of the tribal college presidents that I joined them at last month of what their plan is for TCUs moving forward with workforce Pell.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you. First off, apologies that you're stuck with me rather than Jen, who is much more well-versed on this, but I will do my level best to get you the information that you need here for your discussion today. So to get started in your packet and up here on the screen, what we've got is an updated approval process. There are a few things that are new in here, and a few things that I think we've expanded on a little bit that we want to go through today and just get you a little bit more detail on. To start off with, just high level with the scope and purpose of this policy is just to make sure that we're covering everything that needs to happen in order to certify a workforce Pell eligible program in the state. On our second page, we've got some specific details about what this can look like across, across different types of programs. I know that the commissioner mentioned that she'll talk a little bit, if Dr. Hall isn't back in, about what options are available for our tribal programs, and tribal program, approval processes. But what we have spelled out here is, just sort of highlighting what the federal law, allows for, in that tribal programs, tribal colleges, tribal governments are able to opt in. So the tribal government can choose to follow this policy that we are producing, or they can choose to develop their own. That's what we've got set forth here in this main document. Following approval by the governor or a tribal government, the documentation then is passed on to the U.S. Department of Education for that final approval. Dr. Hall, you're here. We're so glad. You're gonna help us out here with this presentation in just a minute. All right, so for the application contents, there are a few things that we're gonna ask for that are really important. Any participating institution that is seeking approval must submit a letter that identifies the 406 job sector and the SOC code. At the back of your packet, what you've got is a great big full list of occupations that we have identified in those high demand industries. Those right now is sort of a full laundry list of those occupations. What our economist team is working on doing right now is also adding in some indicators for those that meet that 60% wage threshold that will be qualifying for this. So right now, those lists in the back of your packet is a great big long list, and then we'll have kind of a tailored list on top of that, that's got some more specificity to it. But we wanted you to see that full list and have that available to institutions, so that they're able to see what does exist across all those sectors. Now, to apply, there are several categories of employer demand. One is that it's linked to a Montana registered apprenticeship. 2, that there's an industry recognized credential. 3, that it is a sector recommended program. Or 4, which is kind of our external bucket, which would require a complete employer demand review. So those first 3 categories are what we've discussed as kind of the fast track approval process. If it meets one of those, we go through that sort of abbreviated process, because we know that any of those meets the original standards that we really want to have. That 4th category, the employer demand review, has a little bit more that we're going to ask of individual institutions to provide to us. Let's skip down here a little bit as well. We've got some information about what this needs to look like for completion by location. This is by specific institution, and then we need to show evidence of a job placement rate of at least 70%. So we've got what's called sort of colloquially right now as the 70-70 rule. And what that means is that they need to illustrate a 70% completion rate, and then also have the value added earnings that are calculated that falls at the allowable level. So anything that drops near that threshold, we will have a monitoring process that I'll talk about in just a minute that will help us capture what we need to do early on if there's any risk of not meeting that standard. So after the application is received by us, the Workforce Services Division, the division that I lead, will undertake a review. And that's going to look like the application flowing into us through most likely a portal where we're able to accept that information in a standardized format. Our team will look at everything to assure sector alignment, make sure that it does meet that eligible employer demand, and that it is likely to meet that value added earnings requirement that is going to come from the feds every year. Our staff will inform the institution whether the application looks complete or not. If it's not complete, we'll send it back so that they can complete it. If it is complete, then it'll come to all of you for review. We've scheduled that to come in our spring and our fall SWIB meetings so that you all are reviewing those twice a year. That kind of aligns with the normal sort of training calendar and cadence. For those that require a little bit more review, that fourth category that I talked about, the SWIB will review all complete applications according to the timelines. Registered apprenticeship, as I mentioned, will be a little bit quicker. Programs that have a credential or are recommended by one of our local sector partnerships will also have that quicker process. And then programs that do require that full review of employer demand, the SWIB will look at and will provide to you. You don't have to look it up yourself. We'll provide you with labor market information, employer commitments, evidence of program design elements, projected cohorts, and any other information that might be valuable in helping you determine whether this program would sort of meet that threshold. I'm going to pause because we are now at that governor tribal government decision portion of the process. Do you want to jump in, Commissioner DeBattert?
So we all know workforce Pell is evolving quickly. The way this has been set up in the negotiated rulemaking at the federal level is that SWIB is always the consultation body, meaning that the programs to be considered, as Crystal explained, have to come to SWIB. It's not that we're deciding yes or no programs are viable. It's very specifically, we're deciding as the SWIB, does this program that already exists at a 2 or 4 year institution, does it meet the workforce Pell criteria for Montana? It requires that consultation happen, 1 with SWIB and 2 with the chief elected official in a territory. So for most institutions, that's the governor. However, Montana having 13 tribes organized into 8 tribal governments on 7 land-based reservations, those 8 tribal governments have a different chief elected official. And so thanks to Dr. Hall, he invited me to join a meeting of the tribal college presidents last month that he hosted up at Blackfeet Community College, where we talked in depth about what the tribal plan is for workforce Pell. And I'd like to invite Dr. Hall to share perhaps a little bit about what he's thinking at Blackfeet Community College. And if he's comfortable sharing the perspective of other TCU presidents, great. If not, I'm happy to fill in with what I think I heard, and you can correct me.
So we all know this is incredibly rushed, and we're coming up on a fall semester that is likely to have some. We're probably gonna have some applications come from the tribal colleges using the current process. Our tribe, however, has decided to go and create our own framework. One of the concerns that we have about the framework is that it may not be nuanced enough. And that when I look at developing programs for our students, it's based on what are the employment needs in our community. One of those programs that's actually starting this fall, Northwest approved, also Title IV approved, is meat processing. So I struggle with where does meat processing fit under the state framework? And so our tribe is, I've conducted several focus groups as per the chairman's request, and we now have a new chairman. So I'm gonna have to bring them up to speed. I think we're having a special meeting probably in September, where I'm gonna share the data from those interactions, and then we're gonna move forward on kind of developing what we believe is our framework for the Blackfeet Nation. At our meeting, there was a specific need to have the exception of if a tribe decides to create its own framework, then that would be up to that designated official via the tribal chairman, probably through action of the tribal council, because that's how most of them operate. The chairman can't just rubber stamp something, it's got to go through the whole council, so it'll be subject to approval from the entire council. But the previous chairman and the current chairman, I think, are very pleased to know that we're moving in this direction. The unanswered questions exist is that if our tribe is approving that particular framework, then what is the role of SWIB? What is the role of the governor in providing the oversight under the rules that have been created? I feel like there's going to be concerns about tribal sovereignty and being able to make decisions about what tribes need, and that it's not normally the place of the state, nor is it do they ever want to be in a position where they're creating the assumption that there's some sort of assertion of sovereignty, let's say if a program does not get approved through this process, or if this process is aligned there. So, few things about our Title College, we're all Title IV schools, we all service Pell grants. And we all know that this is gonna be very similar to Pell. It's just a different bucket of money that's coming through the Department of Education. So those processes aren't likely to change. I'm going to the SKC summer meeting where I know FSA is gonna address this and address it from the perspective of being able to build in things that tribes can do in coordination with states to make sure those are there. What I will say will be the challenge for our programs is not a lot of them are fully aligned to apprenticeship or licensure or any of those requirements. So I think there will be some strengthening that will need to be done. And maybe conditional approval based on recommendations to get not only those students through their program graduated, but then get them a credential that can take them and get them that wage that is being required by the new rules. So yes, we're designing our own framework. Other tribes may as well. I don't speak for any of them. But I do speak for, the tribal college presidents are very eager to know what this process through the state is, because that will be the first step many of us will take to getting our program approved through that. So to us though, it is a bit of a litmus test, but it's also an opportunity to strengthen our existing programs that we have. I think like about everything.
Can we talk about the cohort size, concern there?
Yeah, so, we feel that this was written for bigger states with more people, with bigger programs. And we tend to have outcomes that are relatively small cohort sizes, right? And so one of the things that we discussed was if it's not a statewide thing, it would maybe among tribal colleges with similar programs to have a share in cohort size in order to then measure that up when the outcomes are there. When we deal with small cohort size, it looks really insignificant. But I will tell you, if it's even just one person that graduates with a high yielding degree or certificate from one of our institutions, it's a game changer in the community. We can finally have somebody there that can fill that void. Yeah, the trades especially are very, it's pretty precarious right now. The number of trades professionals we have are very limited, so the prices are high. And the availability and the responsiveness of those services are very limited as well. We often have to go outside the reservation and get, support for things from construction and things. And then, we also feel this is an opportunity to, strengthen our local contractors. Because our programs operate under the assumption of issuing preference in some cases, especially when we're doing our contracting and things. So if we can keep the money in our communities, that would be really important. So some of these current contractors may funnel through these programs to get these certifications as well. So there is interest there, but I think the cohort size is really gonna be, a challenge, especially when we're meeting the expectations and the outcomes that are required through there. So I think we kind of agreed that we would share cohorts as all tribal colleges in Montana in order to kind of field that data and also the burden on the institutions. Our data burden is very high. We have federal reporting, we have state reporting. And every funding source we get requires additional reporting on top of that. And our staffing really is not necessarily equipped to handle all that or when get it done. And so, in order to alleviate that, we think with Workforce Pell, we could work together to develop that. Because we do have a lot of comparable programs that have been in existence for over a year that may meet the threshold for us going through this first application phase of these programs.
All right. So, and I think maybe to answer one of your questions to Dr. Hall, up here on line 5, we've got some specifics in terms of how the tribal government might interact with SWIB on that approval process. It's essentially a consultation, but the tribal government would be the deciding body. The application information, at this point would essentially come from us. We could review the application, inform completeness, and then provide that information to SWIB, who could consult with you on that information. All right. So once an application is made, we move into sort of the program monitoring and maintenance. This is the time when folks are learning and getting all of these skills that we're talking about. While that's happening, participating institutions with approved programs will participate in our eligible training provider list. And then we will collect important information so that we're able to track all of their performance and then report back to you on that. So all programs that are approved will be subject to an annual review by the SWIB. My division, the Workforce Services Division, will track several metrics, program completion rates, job placement, and employment in the field, participant earnings, including the value-added earnings metric when we're able to do that, and then apprenticeship completion participation rates where those are applicable. Institutions will report necessary data to us in a timely fashion so that we can turn that information back around and give it to you all for evaluation. And then we'll have an early warning system in place. And this is to make sure that any program that might be at risk of not meeting those thresholds for performance have a chance to know that ahead of time, report to the SWIB what they're going to do to make sure that they stay on track. And we can make sure to try and keep as many programs on that list and keep those students engaged in those programs. So once a program does look like they may not be meeting that 70% threshold, the value added earnings, or the state wage or employment evidence points to potentially weak outcomes, they'll get the early warning notice, and then they'll need to respond to the SWIB within 60 days with the performance improvement plan. SWIB will monitor that information, and for some reason, if that does not improve, then we would look to decertify them. If a program does end up getting decertified, what that looks like is they come off the list for a period of 24 months. During that time, they're not able to apply for submission because they fail to meet those requirements. Excuse me. And so they have sort of an off-list period of time. They can, however, regain eligibility if a program is recommended for decertification. They can apply for re-eligibility and submit that. They can also voluntarily ask to be removed from the list to rebuild that program back up if they would like to. Eligible programs can't submit a substantially similar program while they are decertified. So if a program is decertified, if Crystal's underwater basket weaving gets removed from the list, I can't provide Crystal's super cool basket weaving underwater to be on the list while my other program has been decertified, just to make sure that we're, keeping programs, excuse me, off for a while. And then to wrap things up, bilateral agreements are allowable under federal law. And so we've got specifics outlined here of what that can look like here in the state. And then just clarification that multilateral agreements are not permitted. We've got some specific definitions, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because I think a lot of this is stuff that we have discussed in the previous conversation. But we wanted to make sure to outline in particular what this information around completion rates looks like. So a lot of this is just mirrors what we do see in the federal law. The programs that we do have to maintain eligibility and have that initial eligibility, 70% placement rate and 70% completion rate are required in CFR. The program must comply with the value added earnings requirement. Now that is established on an annual basis by by the feds, not by us. That is a rate that will come from them every year. And then the program has to be operational at an institution for at least 12 months. Also a requirement coming from the federal government immediately preceding the date of application to us. And then finally, the program must be offered by an institution that during the 5 years preceding the date of application has not been subject to suspension, emergency action, or termination of programs under the code of federal regulation. A little bit dry, but we wanted to make sure that you all knew what you were signing on for here. This is a really interesting program that's giving us some new opportunities around Pell and ways that we can expand what training can look like in the state, especially for these short-term programs. So we're standing up some really good, I think, frameworks for you all to consider, to vote on here today, and happy to entertain any questions that you do have. Yeah.
Under the scope section, says the policy applies to all non-degree education and training programs offered by a participating institution, which is defined as an eligible institution meets the standards for Title IV. And reading that, I'm assuming the goal is that applicants are still Title IV certified. Correct. So within that, similar to the discussion we just had on the tribal schools, I'm imagining from my experience that a lot of the Title IV certified education don't have registered apprenticeships or have will struggle on the job placement and completion numbers, while all the experienced registered apprenticeships are not going to be Title IV. I feel like within the application, that's going to force partnership in all registered apprenticeships to come under a Title IV institution from the regulatory administration side. But within the application, I would imagine we're going to see a lot of new partnerships having to form. So so we won't have years of, if my program were to go partner with Gallatin College, for example, and utilize their Title IV, there won't be a history. You know, we can use
Are you talking about like that 12-month requirement?
Yeah, and anything as far as if it's a brand new partnership, are we using my information in the application or Gallatin College's information in the application?
Commissioner, you want to take that one?
I think you just very perfectly illustrated, Josh, how clear some of these federal rules are. So let's talk for just a second about federal rulemaking. There's two different kinds of rulemaking. There's rulemaking where they draft the rule, publish it, the public comments, and then the department moves forward. And then there's what's called negotiated rulemaking. And the U.S. Department of Education tends to prefer negotiated rulemaking, which is a big table where they negotiate very transparently and publicly, and all kinds of new things get put in. In negotiated rulemaking, that's where this came from. It was at the 11th hour as they were doing the rule, they put in the Title IV institution rule without any rules around the rule. We don't know. But we do have technical advisors at both USDOL and US Department of Ed that we're happy to reach right back out to and find out which timeframe are we using? Are we using the fact that Williams Plumbing's certification program has existed for 5 years? Or would it be the new partnership with a 2-year institution? I don't know. That's not clear in the rule. I don't know. Joe, do you know any more from OCHI's perspective with US Department of Ed?
This is clear as mud. And to be fair, I think there's 5 or 6 states so far that published rules on this. We are going to expect this coming year is going to be a lot of questions and additional guidance along these lines. My sense is that it's, from the U.S. Department of Education standpoint, the Title IV institution who's receiving and accountable for the funds. So they're submitting the application. And if they're partnering with you on related training for an apprenticeship, then it's how long has that related training component existed at the institution? So that's my best guess from the ranks thus far as to what the department's going to care about from timeline. But, as we said, and as you said, this is hopefully, ideally going to push folks to new types of partnerships exactly of that type. And something that did change here was previously for Title IV purposes, institutions could only partner out 25% of a given curriculum. That, under these regulations, and for workforce Pell only has increased to 50% of a given curriculum. And so there is some different flexibilities around partnerships, more so than Title IV has had before. As the commissioner will share with you, there was absolutely a push and debate in negotiated rulemaking to push that threshold higher. But, I think that's one of the things with Gowton College or with other folks is to say, what do we have existing that can fit well for RTI? How can we maybe tweak it? And what pointed questions can we put to the U.S. Department of Education in terms of 12-month timelines and availability?
Negotiated rulemaking going on, and they're finalizing this with Northwest accreditation.
Mhm.
Now, they actually changed the rules where regional accreditation is not required. So any college can seek any accreditation body to accredit their programs of study. So there's that piece. The next piece is that in the new rules that Northwest is talking about when I go to my meeting at 3:15 today in Tableau, is how does that impact? Because it usually only pertains to degree programs that are a year or more versus the short term. So they're actually catching up to the short term requirement of new programs that they normally did not approve. They normally would approve it under a pilot or they approve it under a 1-year certificate, but they would never approve it, with welding, for example, because that has its own certification structure. So now that Northwest is getting involved in that, and they do accredit all Montana higher education institutions, I believe, unless somebody switched over. There's gonna be some changes to the accreditation, which is gonna, I think, pertain to these changes in the workforce Pell as well. Because they need to be accredited in order to receive, that's the first eligibility requirement. And then that program undergoes a similar review with the Department of Education. And so that's how that happens there. So I don't think your process is any different. I think it's just one more step that we would really have to go through the regular process.
Heather O'Hara again with the Montana Hospital Association. Because I'm not real close to the academic piece of it, I have just a couple of questions. Has there been any comments or concerns in regards to the reporting requirements from individuals or institutions? Because I'm concerned about that. And then lastly, the completion rates. I understand specifically what you're saying about tribal colleges, but I don't think tribal colleges are alone. There's a lot of small institutions in the state and we don't have a lot of volume. And so completion rates is something that, piqued my interest because I think that's going to be a concern down the road in regards to 70%.
Jody.
Anybody have comments?
Jody.
Yes and yes. And, I think I'm gonna give you maybe some of the perspectives that I think led to this very narrow gate and negotiated rulemaking. And in fact, there was a pilot done for short-term workforce programming where they track wage outcomes following from these very, we're talking between 6 and 9 month educational pathways. And it was very few that led to a strong earnings gain. Right, and we would think about that with apprenticeship, right? We talk about 2,000 hours in terms of on-the-job training, being an apprenticeship component minimum. Part of that is a recognition that it takes time to gain skill. And yes, that skill and friendship is very valuable in the workforce. I think there's similar concerns of, it's gonna be few programs that hit the expectation where the department or the rule makers were eager to go down the path of, we're gonna dedicate new resources absent a lot of hoops. And there are a lot of hoops here where it will be not many programs in the state of Montana early on who navigate those hoops effectively. Some of the opportunity I do think is, related training. That's true on the not workforce, not short-term health side. We do have programs, at several of our institutions that I think fit or can be structured to fit this. We have some programs that have good workforce outcomes that are strategically 16 weeks so that they can be Pell eligible. But maybe now institutions will see value in shortening those because they have another opportunity for students to receive funding and they can be accelerated. So, in my view, we're just going to have to be strategic, thoughtful, data-based, which Crystal and I have had some good conversations of. Where do we use some of our existing data so that we can forecast, hey, where is this a good idea and where is this maybe not so good? On the reporting requirement, I think that's where we can all be strategic on. ETPL has reporting as a component of that. That's part of this board's kind of fiduciary responsibility of oversight. Where can we align these things? Where can we use data systems well so that that's not overly burdensome? Given our expectation is early on, this is going to be relatively few programs, relatively few students until we get the design criteria right, the partnerships right, to figure out, yeah, this is the type of thing, this is the type of program, this is the type of partnership that really ought to go down the workforce Pell pathway. But it is fully our expectation in the university system that it's going to start out being a few strategically placed programs and partnerships that are testing those waters as we figure it out. And who knows, maybe we'll provide some good evidence to the U.S. Department of Education and others to say, if you really wanted this to go gangbusters and work well, here's some of the things you might change.
Thank you, Betsy.
Can we go down to Josh first and then jump back in order here? I think just to try and give some reassurance while we pass the microphone to our internal team is definitely looking at the way that we can design that application process and gain some efficiencies as possible to make sure that there is a low administrative burden and where there are ways that we can collect data once rather than 2, 3, 4 times. We're going to try and work on that as well.
Yeah, and that's really my comment on the administrative burden, is that everybody's sharing a lot of my frustration with the process is 180 degrees. The participation rate, completion rate, income outcomes, we are out of the park on every one of your concerns. So that's for our plumbing apprenticeship, it is 3,500 hours, so it's even longer, but they'll come out making double the, statewide average income. And so if we are at 100% completion rate, 0 delinquencies across our students. So within those outcomes, every other requirement, we have 0 issue with. It's strictly the administrative burden in how we partner. Also to the outcome that half of the Pell grant money isn't spent on administration. Because that's our leverage right now, is that the administration is minute, but everything that we've done Title IV and that what we've done, every dollar that might come in through our doors through these programs is going to be spent on administration. And the last piece that I feel like we got to sort out with higher ed is, for example, being in Bozeman, if our partnership was Gallatin College, where's the tension with 50%, being outsourced? Because we have high school students that are looking at our HVAC program, and a Gallatin College offers an HVAC program. So now can I not partner with them, or is that a conflict when if you come to Williams's HVAC apprenticeship, it's fully paid for, and you get an apprenticeship license, where at Gallatin College it's $9,000 for a 2-year certification. So we don't want to be in conflict with them, but now are they eliminated as a potential partner because we're competitive with the spirit, I guess, in some sense. And so these are the pieces that I would look at the board and say, how can we, have these partnerships to where I don't have to have two staff members just to manage administrative work, yet for the needs that higher ed, is looking for to knock these other numbers out of the park, we're the perfect partner. So we have to sort out something to where, the actual goal is to career technical training. And how do we not spend 2 or 3 years fumbling through this when there's high school graduates that could earn high incomes and get these programs in the short term?
You want to
Can I ask
pass?
one more question since we're passing?
Our president here with us.
Just a reminder on time, we've got a total of 10 minutes left to discuss, and then we have to open up to public comment before we vote. One other thing, I'd like some feedback, Tammy and I would, and whether it's right here, right now, or it's after the meeting, is how do we house the oversight of this at SWIB? There are 6 options that we see. 1, it could go directly to the executive committee. 2, it could go to the WIOA Systems Committee, one of the 3 406 jobs committees, or we would create a new committee. So something to consider as you think about the administration of this process as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? So this probably is for Joe or others in the room, but so we're ultimately talking about students. That really should be our priority, right? And so I'm curious, do we know, is this going to displace students or their opportunities as a result of this? Because we're going to be working through all these processes. Is there going to end up being an impact to our students who want to go through some of these programs?
So the answer there is yes. Yeah. So if a program is eligible, goes through this, that means the student can submit a FAFSA. And for that program previously, they would have paid some form of tuition or fees, whether that's in the traditional for-credit certificate space at a college, or if it's a non-credit short-term training, or if it's a partnership related training instruction in either of those spaces. Well, now those students have somewhere up to $7,000 for that year that can help not just their tuition and fees, but other costs associated with that education. And right now, those pathways, those programs are not eligible for that bucket of federal aid. And if you think about the amount of funding that we have in SNAP education and training as a state, in WIOA buckets, I mean, that's potentially a sizable amount of money if we have high quality programs that can gain knowledge.
What keeps me up at night about this is the fact that there is no more money per individual student in workforce Pell. Instructors cost more in workforce trades. The equipment costs are higher than textbooks, if you can believe it. And also for our students to get a registered apprenticeship, they have to go to Great Falls or Kalispell. And those types of things are really burdensome, and really the need for subsidization of expenses, whether it's lodging, and those kind of expenses are being put on people that don't have these credentials and are not earning those wages that they will. And can they afford to go into debt to do that? The other big caveat is that our PCUs do, with the exception of one, St. Lucia Community College, does not offer student loans, because we realize that that debt burden actually follows them if they ever transfer to the Montana University system. And so we have these things in place that help our students get where they are needed. I don't know that there's a right answer for this, but I do think that it's going to be a combination of the partnership between the different state agencies and who have funding to support those, the apprenticeship program being one. And we've had a conversation about the workforce, healthcare workforce, through the rural transformational health. That's gonna be a big added bonus too, because now we can help support some of those clinical expenses and things. But that's in one area of health and as part of the framework. But what about the other ones? That's what I'm concerned about. I do think that partnerships with businesses, partnerships with colleges, those are gonna be a major part of that, but then we're gonna come to the table that who's gonna pay for this. Who's gonna pay for the student getting that credential? I do think the partnerships are gonna be critical in meeting the threshold for employment after graduation though. So if I think there is a benefit to that, it just means that we're gonna have to figure that out.
So I want to take us back to our own data, right? Why are we here? Why are 12 of you here representing the 6 high impact industries of 406 jobs? Why are stakeholders from other agencies and higher education and our organized labor friends? And it's because of the data of the critical chronic ongoing workforce shortages in Montana, right? The data that led us to 406 jobs shows that we collectively as a state need 30,000 new skilled trained tradesmen and women, construction type workers and construction type trades in the next 10 years. And that our current system of supply is vastly under producing the workers that we need. And then we go back and look at the data that our federal partners are looking at, which was similar across the country. That's what led to the president issuing his 1 million new apprenticeship challenge by 2029. And it's what's leading to these big conversations about new ways to fund the system. I truly believe, after all my conversations with our colleagues at Department of Labor and Department of Ed federally, that what they were trying to do was incentivize the kind of outcomes you're describing, Josh, that the private sector has cracked this. You have large cohorts, you have 100% completion, you're knocking the beginning earnings out of the park. And all of the pieces of value-added earnings are working, and they were trying to design a government system to do what you're already doing, which is again why we're here, right? An industry-led responsive workforce system, but through negotiated rulemaking, we turned it back into a government program. And we're trying to manage what you're already doing really well, when what we were actually trying to do was build capacity. When you go back and listen to the early conversations with those federal stakeholders about why did they design Workforce Pell, it was to incentivize more rapid to market apprenticeship style, short-term credential tradesmen and women through whether it was through modularizing joint apprenticeship training center programming, whether it was private apprenticeship programming like Williams Plumbing or like the independent electrical colleges in Montana. They were trying to incentivize that. And then negotiated rulemaking did what negotiated rulemaking does. And here we are. We're square pegging a round hole at this point, but they are the rules that we have. So it goes back to the first question we asked at this table, the first question I asked Dr. Paul and the tribal college presidents of, let's just step back. Is this worth the squeeze? Maybe, maybe not. I think what we've all collectively decided is let's try it for a year, but it might not fit every program because it is massively burdensome. Talking about those small cohorts, right now, there is no disincentive for Williams Plumbing or Blackfeet Community College or any institution in Joe's Montana University system from holding a small cohort. If you've got 2 kids that want to obtain a certain credential, there's nothing holding you back from that. But with Workforce Pell, there might be, because with a 70% completion rate, that means both of them must finish, or that whole program is decertified for everyone else. So there's no longer incentive in Montana to be nimble and responsive, right? If we're talking about a program in Miles City or Glasgow or Lanephier, 2 might be enough. But is it worth risking the viability of the future of your program? Or would you just not hold that cohort? These are real challenges for Montana. And then when we think about the placement, that actually worries me more than completion. Let's say Dr. Hall has a great Workforce Pell program rolling at Blackfeet Community College. She has 2 students in that cohort. They put all the student supports around them to get them both done because we know we have to. Now both must have a job in that field almost immediately upon completion. Are there 2 jobs in that field in the Blackfeet community right now? I don't know. That's the other piece, right? It's something you've already cracked in the private sector, but we're trying to solve here. We do have a couple of options. One, we wait it out and see if the feds will pull back this tier 4 institution requirement. It got put in at the 11th hour. There is a lot of pressure federally right now to open it up to more providers than just tier 4. That's not going to happen this year. So it might not. The other opportunity is that other institutions like the Williams Plumbing Academy, the Joint Apprenticeship Training Center, could pursue Title IV status, but that requires a pretty comprehensive paperwork process through accreditation and other things that also may not be worth the squeeze. So we're square pegging around hole. But I think the answer, the right answer, after all the conversations we've all had, is let's try it, but let's be really forthright that this might not work for every program in year one, and then let's reevaluate, work with our federal partners and see if we can advocate for more flexibility, or maybe it's not the right fit for Montana. I don't know, but I'm remiss to not try it for a year.
All right, I know we've got to wrap up, but move to public comment probably. I just wanted to let you all know before I step down here, that you're doing great work in talking through all of this. There's lots of these similar questions in other states that we're talking to, especially smaller states who have the small cohort size questions, who have the completion size questions, who have the questions about how do partnerships really look like in practice. And so thank you for thinking through those with us as we develop all of this. We are sort of in the middle of the pack. There are a few states who have some things out already. There are a few states who are saying this is so complicated that we've got to hold on and see what happens for a year. And so I'm really glad that we are sort of stepping forward with all of this. Thank you for taking the time and putting a lot of thought into helping us do this right.
Thank you, Chris. Before we open to public comment, I want to maybe challenge the board a little to think more broadly about issues like this. The pool isn't only the federal Pell Grant pool. And if we get myopically focused on this small pot of money, we miss the opportunity to change how the relationship with industry works. The dollars are available. This money is being spent somewhere in the private sector because there's a gap. Josh does a pretty good job of laying out, they found a gap, they've executed a gap, they have the results in one space. It exists in every industry because the demand is there. Somebody's figuring out how to do this, but collectively, our education system, our governance system, and our private sector are not partnering in it. It's always a silo or a competition. So how can we get beyond it? And what do we need to do? What rulemaking opportunity, what flexibility do we need so that we can make that a reality? And I just encourage this group to think about it not as, because we need to partner with the education system. We need to partner with the tribal colleges. We've got to figure this out together. But if we only focus on the here and now of what this small pool is, we miss the opportunity to do that. So we just, as we move through this, I think it's important that we think, and frankly, right now, we've got a federal labor and education partner who says, I don't know, tell us what you think needs to be done. We've got an opportunity, we should seize. If we can, work through this first year, figure out what it means and show progress and say, hey, if we had this and this next year, maybe we have an opportunity to really move. So just as we kind of move forward through this process, would ask everybody to think through what that might look like, what might be possible, as we go forward. With that, I'm going to open it to public comment. If there's anyone in the room.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Is there provision in all of this for in-state versus out-of-state students? And I'm speaking from compliance with the metrics where, in our case in Missoula a couple of years ago, in the welding program, there were every student in the welding program was an out-of-state student. So how do you track placement? How do you track revenue? How does that count?
There certainly can be bilateral agreements between states in that process, so that would likely be the avenue for that.
Who tracks that? I mean, we have to go follow them to wherever they came from and find out if they're working.
Yeah. The Department of Labor at the end of the day. It would be where it is. So,
It seems like it might be a challenge.
yep. Public comment online. Can't see the. Okay. All right, the question on the table is approving the process. Obviously, there's a lot of work left to do, but we've got to start there. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we're 4 minutes ahead of schedule. So, we're going to, our, Lewis Stewart from NVIDIA on here shortly. If you want to take a quick break, just be asked to be back in your seats here by 9:30, which is about 4 minutes. And then just so everybody's aware, Heather has graciously accepted taking over as chair. I will be joining you virtually for the rest of the meeting as I have to drive to Fargo tonight. So it should be a good time. Yes.
What did you?
I'm on.
No, that's pretty, yeah.
Oh, he's on.
So, yeah, let's get started.
Everybody can please take their seats. We're gonna get started here again. Do we have a speaker on the? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to the next portion of this meeting today with a guest speaker, Mr. Lewis Stewart from NVIDIA. Lewis Stewart is the head of ecosystem development, where he builds the human layer that makes advanced computing usable at scale. He leads ecosystem engagement and market readiness through K to career programs that connect governments, higher education institutions, including HBCUs, HSIs, and community colleges, industry partners, and learning communities to grow tech preparedness, expand the developer base, and turn AI momentum into real workforce outcomes. Mr. Stewart, we're really pleased to be able to welcome you to the Montana State SWIB board. My name is Adam Gilbertson. I'm the current chair of the board. And we look forward to this conversation with you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, no, thank you very much. And every time somebody reads my bio, I feel a little weird because I don't like to talk about myself. So I appreciate that, even though I'm the one that provided you the bio. When Tammy asked for it, I was like, see, we don't need to do all that. So thank you all very much for the time this morning, and I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation. I don't know if I have the ability to share a deck or no. It's just 2 slides. Are you guys good with that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yep, just checking. So I've been at NVIDIA for almost 6 years now, and have had the privilege of building a small team here at the company that focuses on what we're calling the human layer, right? So Jensen has this 5-layer cake, and that's all focused on technology stacks and adoption of the platform. And we do everything from hardware to software. But none of it actually works unless we have the people that know how to run it. My background is primarily economic and workforce development. I served 13 years in public service in California, 2 governors, Schwarzenegger and Brown. But then also, when NVIDIA came and recruited me, I was the Chief Innovation Officer in the city of Sacramento for 3 years. So everything that I do is around ecosystem building and putting people first to make sure that innovation happens with them, not to them. And now working for this fabulous company, I need to work double time and find partners that we can do some tremendous work. And the folks in Montana are proving to be those type of folks, which I'm excited about. This, if you guys can see the slides okay, I just want to say, very clearly who we are and what we do. So I have this small team at NVIDIA that builds the human layer, the workers, the teachers, and the students that actually use AI. My team doesn't actually sell anything. We don't build data centers. We focus on the people that need to understand how to build data centers, if that's one of the priority growth areas of the state. But then also, how do we work with you to build up the skills in your primary industries? And we do that through the institutions you already have. So government, college, school to work programs, and communities. And
I was excited when Tiffany Alvidrez came back from having conversations with you all and talked to me about the 406 jobs executive order. And the way that we line up with that is we train teachers, we help small businesses adopt AI and upskill workers. We advance manufacturing and computing, and because that's actually one of our key sectors, and we want to play in whatever sectors that you have the ideas and goals that you want to uplift in the state in order for Montana to compete in the AI economy. NVIDIA courses can become stackable. So a lot of our courses are through our Deep Learning Institute, which is currently being reconstituted, our NVIDIA Academy, which is more infrastructure based. But then we also partner with education platforms like StudyFetch or Boodlebox or just to name a couple, where we actually bring the learning down to the K-12 level. We start thinking about how we build true pathways for learners to go right now from ninth to career. But hopefully soon we'll be looking at moving that down with trusted partners on the ground in your state. For us, it's looking at how do we partner our content in the Deep Learning Institute, which has historically been about deep research and deep engineering. But through the platforms, as I mentioned, we're actually we're breaking those down into concepts and principles in order to make them more adaptable and accessible by rural communities, by indigenous communities, by reskilling and upskilling pathways that you may have. And so what we're super interested in is how do we work with the industry in the state to partner with our curriculum so that we're actually building pathways to jobs and move on from there. For us, it really is about how do we help your plan go faster? How do we help you move into a place where AI just becomes ubiquitous with Montana? We've actually had change slides. We've actually had a couple meetings with Montana State. They came into our headquarters and had meetings with some of our execs. My team will be kind of helping the execs with that engagement. Looking at Montana Tech with the mineral AI, the minerals for AI chips. Looking at farming, we have a growing ag tech practice here at the company. And then big AI data centers that are being planned, which create, a few years of real jobs. But what we actually want to do is figure out how, again, we walk alongside you to look at the new jobs that are created, the new industries that may spawn to support those, support any entrepreneurs through our Inception program, which is our startup ecosystem, and really just figure out how NVIDIA can walk alongside all of you. Where we work with government, there's this board, the Montana Labor and Industry Department, any state AI leads, colleges, like I said, we're working with Montana State, love to work with Montana Tech, some of the tribal and community colleges in the area. And then the last lane that we actually have is really the learning community. So those are your professional development organizations, some other nonprofits that hit upskilling, reskilling of professionals that are coming back into jobs or transitioning jobs, whatever that may be. So our team really looks at a holistic approach to the state, to the learning institutions, so that it really is, a true collaboration. I think if we have a better understanding of the learning environment and the goals and objectives that you all have for upskilling and reskilling, we can do kind of a more hands-on collaborative approach to building some flagship programs in the state. And it can become statewide models, and then hopefully with us and the way that we're moving globally, we can put Montana out there as an exemplar, a use case of how you work with the state, work with the community to bring humans to the table. I have a whole lot of other words, but I feel like I need to stop because I said a lot of them already and answer any questions that you have. I only have 2 slides. I really wanted to just take this opportunity to introduce the work that we do. I can answer more questions about NVIDIA as a whole, or the work that we do, if you're interested.
Thank you, Louis. This is Commissioner Swanson. Thank you so much for joining us again today. For our friends in the room, just to orient kind of why we're here and why we invited Louis, and to open it up for your questions for Louis about what a partnership with NVIDIA would look like, I want to reorient us for just a second in the 406 Jobs Executive Order that this group pulled together the framework, asked the governor to execute. In that executive order about AI, it specifically says the Department of Labor, in collaboration with OPI, OG, and the Montana Department of Commerce, shall lead the AI initiative. And there's 6 tasks that we've been challenged to execute on: providing and expanding opportunities to equip all Montanans with AI skills, providing professional development opportunities, supporting educators in incorporating AI skills, identifying opportunities to integrate AI tools, assisting job seekers navigating career pathways, encouraging public-private partnerships that accelerate AI workforce development, and through our friend Louis at NVIDIA, and supporting small businesses in upskilling existing workers and incorporating those AI technologies into their business model, and prioritizing broad-scale digital modernization, including AI readiness. So in quest of achieving on this mission with our 4 partners that are stated in the executive order, we at the department have been reaching out to the world's leaders on AI. The front runner in that is clearly NVIDIA by almost every metric. When we met with Louis and his team 3 weeks ago, what I was most excited about is that they are really strategically sending an important message, which is, all the things that Montana is interested in developing are achievable through a partnership with a partner like AI. However, it's not pursuing AI as a technology demonstration or a procurement exercise or a tool. It's truly a distinction that matters, which is using AI as part of the ecosystem and upskilling all of the parties involved. I think that's a real resource that Louis and his team can provide. We met with them about 3.5 weeks ago, and we're so excited to jump forward. However, our commitment to all of you is that in executing 406 Job, we know this has to be industry-led. You're our spokespeople for both labor organizations, industry, and so we wanted to give you a chance to hear right from Louis about what this could look like and ask all of your questions that you might have. What if Montana had a broad-scale partnership with NVIDIA? Could this board be the ecosystem to help them with those connections? Joe, I know you were out of the room, but they're really interested in pursuing partnership with Montana Tech, for example. Could this group be their front door to Montana? And what could that mean to the workers and the employers we're trying to support? So I know this is a short amount of time to learn everything Louis has to offer, but it's really a big opportunity for us to have him here.
So I would open it up to any questions. I can start off with a question. Him who you are. Oh, sure. So, Mr. Stewart, my name is Heather O'Hara, Vice President with the Montana Hospital Association. So we represent all the hospitals in the state of Montana. So that kind of opens the door in regards to my question. I don't know if all of you are the same, but in looking at our industries, AI is moving very fast. And we have people in our workforce now throughout our healthcare entities that they don't know how to use it. They don't know if they can trust it. There's just a lot of questions and they know it's coming. And you're being asked to use it. So I guess one of the questions I'd ask all of you in the room is, do you feel as an industry you're prepared for this? And then secondly, I would love to know what Mr. Stewart thinks in regards to, how, you kind of give us a high overview of how you would support all of this. Can you give us an example, maybe in the healthcare sector or other sectors, and how this really has worked and had maybe improved efficiency and whatnot in the work? course. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'll let anybody answer first, or I can answer, depending on how you want to do it.
You can go ahead and I'll let people
Okay.
jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. So NVIDIA actually has a really big life science, biotech, healthcare practice. It's actually probably one of the more evolved sectors that we have. So for us, a lot of it in the healthcare space looks at big partnerships for life-changing scientific efforts. So if you look up our healthcare team, you'll see Kimberly Powell's name pop up pretty much everywhere around the world, talking about how NVIDIA and biotech and life science partners are changing the way science is done. But at the human level, my team is actually working on a couple nurses that work here at NVIDIA to build up nursing pathways, because we're working with some community colleges across the country that actually have nursing programs, and really thinking about how that profession can actually be augmented with AI and allow the nurses to actually give their time back to taking care of the people, and some of the tasks end up being offloaded to AI. This is a big leadership shift for hospital systems globally, to really think about how, just like in schools, you become more human centric. My team believes that AI actually has the ability to bring out the humanity in industry. So from schools, teaching students how to be critical thinkers, how to be creative thinkers, how to be more collaborative. But then in the skilled workforce, like nursing in particular, how do you actually set up agents throughout the hospital so that coding gets done automatically, so that reports get done in a trusted fashion? How do you build all this stuff in a dedicated environment so that your cybersecurity is taken care of? So we actually look at all those different levers. Actually talking to a couple of startups that actually are cybersecurity specialists in this space, because we want to bring partners to the table that enable you to make your vision possible. But ultimately, through our healthcare models and libraries, we've seen exponential speed ups and augmentations in cancer discovery, protein folding, all those kind of things that make doctors even better at what their job, and enable the medical profession to save lives faster. Our technology was actually central to discovering the build of the COVID vaccine. We were able, researchers used a lot of our GPUs to discover, what, how, and why that virus was spreading so fast. And we think that our technology can enable a whole lot more life-saving discoveries. So if you think about the whole profession, hospitals as the infrastructure, the people inside of it, there are ways through different platforms that we have, different platforms that some of our partners bring, that we can bring to the table to help you kind of re-envision what public health can look like in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'm actually a registered nurse, and so you really piqued my interest, and I feel like I can speak on behalf of a lot of nurses that we represent in our hospitals, that they would love to get back to the patient and being able to have that relationship with their patients instead of just working on documenting. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I believe there will be some more questions in the room. Please identify yourself for the open and obviously he has a good understanding.
Hi, Mr. Stewart. I'm Josh Montana. I'm the Chief Business Officer of Williams Companies. We're a family of construction companies. We're a larger specialty contractors of plumbers, HVAC, and excavation in the state of Montana. So within this, I think about some of what you put on the screen as far as courses and how we integrate this into our apprenticeships to increase understanding and adoption of AI. But really in the private sector, what I see, and on your slides, I see a lot of partnerships with higher ed in government. Within the private sector, are there coursework or options in there at a very basic level? Because a lot of what I see and what we're going through right now is just simple governance. Within, across 400 employees, are we tying ourselves to certain frontier models? Who are we giving licenses to? At a very broad sense, I think private industry is going to need to understand how to implement governance and get adoption within our teams. And the fact that we have employees across every age group and technological skill level within the organization, rather than form a committee and kind of peck at, here's a small agent here, here's a small agent over there, that get very granular gains. How do we implement wholesale initiatives within the organization? I mean, that I really think on the private side, especially in a rural place like Montana, that's typically a little bit late on technology relative to other parts of the country. I'd be interested to hear how NVIDIA, if you have structure and framework to help the private sector there.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so I'll say this. I sort of framed how my team is organized, and we're trying to influence other parts of the organization, other parts of the company. So my team is really living at the intersection of government, industry, and academia. So yes, you saw government and academia on the slide, but industry has to be a part of it. If we're not walking alongside the industries that are specific to the region that we're working in, there isn't a way for us to help inspire and impact and provide the impact with AI that we think is possible. So that being said, in certain states, we're working with industry around manufacturing. In certain states, we're working around automotive. We try to look at the top 5 industries in a region in order for us to build our collaboration around. Historically, to answer your question directly, historically, the way that training has been done at NVIDIA with industry has been at the enterprise level. And so if a company has a bunch of researchers, then we are able to provide training for them. With some of the ed tech platforms that we're using, or some of the education partners that we're using, we're actually trying to get more precise around what is the actual need within the region, within the state, in and around the small business community, so that we understand more precisely how we can actually help. We don't have a how to use ChatGPT course, right? That's not what we do. What we can do is partner with folks to actually weave in our courses and our curriculum that we think would be helpful to augment an industry. So, in construction, everything from the governance piece is huge, but now thinking about a job site, how do you think about doing a 3D rendering of the job site before you go in, so you can actually look at making the job site more efficient, making the job site safer, those kind of things. And that can be done with our Omniverse and digital twin technology. So we can kind of abstract some of these technologies that we have to make them useful for a specific industry. We don't want to come in and say we have the answers, but we absolutely want to walk alongside you to have a better understanding of what your needs are, and then see what we can actually build with that collaboration between government, industry, and academia. Because a lot of our delivery model will be through community colleges, will be through the university, will be through VOTech, will be through all those different areas, versus coming directly from NVIDIA as a learning platform.
Hello, Louis. Thank you for speaking with us today. My name is Jason Yeager. I serve as the Executive Director of the Montana Photonics and Quantum Alliance. On your second slide, you listed lasers, quantum, materials, and I believe back in March, NVIDIA, announced $4 billion investment in photonics to Lumentum and Coherent. Do you see a potential collaboration with the state of Montana in advanced photonics and next gen chips? And what would that potentially look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So fantastic question, and glad to see you did some homework. We actually had a meeting with some of the folks over at Montana State. I mentioned they came to our headquarters, and so all those subject areas came up during that conversation. But what also came up during that conversation was what would it look like to do a broad scale memorandum of understanding with the state where we can actually look at those future industries alongside the workforce pipeline, alongside kind of the what's next. So that way it helps us understand how to engage at a statewide level as well as at the university level. And that's all predicated by working with the Gov's office, working with you guys to shape what an MOU could look like so that we have basically a 5-year runway to get embedded into your ecosystem and drive some of these initiatives. So again, it's really intended to walk alongside you so that you guys can lead us in the direction where you're headed. But then you get the benefit of walking alongside us as some of our researchers, some of these investments, some of these announcements come out, and we're better able to connect you to subject matter experts internally, the researchers internally, and point the company towards really the blue sky efforts that are happening in Montana.
Mr. Stewart, my name's Joe Teal. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the university system, and I've heard about the great conversations with Montana State. So excited for that collaboration starting up, and very much excited for ways that we can partner on the research front. And I saw the 2 flagship areas, agriculture, critical minerals. Following on Heather O'Hara's comment, I think one space that's also opportune where the university where SWIB is meeting today, the University of Montana, has some great partnerships in progress, is on AI applications in rural healthcare. The partnership with the Providence Health System, and they're probably the largest in the country, gathering of medical records from rural facilities. And I think that's a complex space, but one that's ripe with opportunity. And if the university system can ever be of help in connecting with folks Montana Tech or the University of Montana, happy to do so. I think that's another good candidate for the list of areas where a partnership could be fruitful.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So what's super interesting about what you just brought up is, and I tried to keep my slides to 2, so I didn't give you guys a bunch of examples of stuff. So we're working with university systems in several states right now, again, holistic fashion, so that as these areas and topics come up, we look at how do we set up programs within the university so that we're actually training the students on some of this stuff. So if you think about the museum space, I just came back from Paris, for example, talking to Bloomberg and the Louvre Museum to talk about how do we upskill post-secondary students to digitize content, to do all this stuff that museums have maybe in archives, because it then becomes an upskilling effort so that when the students graduate, they can graduate into jobs, because there's a lot of museums around Europe. And seeing if Bloomberg is interested in funding something like that. Here in the US, we're doing that with the King Center down in Atlanta. California, we're doing that with University of Riverside and a news organization to digitize and archive and catalog journalism records for 90 years. So all these files and stuff, all this data comes in different forms and formats. So we're working with the university to have the students learn and execute, because then you can actually build university to X industry pathways for the students to actually have what could be a job on the other end. So super interested in exploring that more with you as well.
Hello, my name is Sarah Schreiner and I represent childcare providers across Montana. One of the things that I hear from them and other service-based industries is a computer can't replace my job, a software program cannot replace my job.
Yeah.
And they're right about the core of it. Software can't replace a teacher in the classroom. But childcare is not the only service-based industry in 406 jobs. They all have core duties that can't be automated. So how do you anticipate this partnership supporting those industries where there's real reluctance or simply a lack of understanding on how AI could help without replacing the work itself?
Yeah, so great question. You know, one of the things that I've actually struggled with inside of NVIDIA is getting NVIDIA to allow me to talk about the fear that AI is bringing, because it's seen as a negative, and so for me coming from government, dealing with citizens, dealing with real people, I tend to address the fear head on and try to meet people where they're at. So that's kind of how my team is built. Do we at NVIDIA have solutions for that? No. What we try to do to address that is actually just bring real people to the conversation that have similar challenges and struggles, and so that we can actually have a real conversation and help meet people where they're at. So, you know, and whether it be a small mom and pop, whether it be a childcare facility, whatever, you know, the best thing that government can do is convene. And so if we're able to walk into rooms alongside all of you and just have conversations with folks as part of the pathway building, as part of getting people comfortable with stuff, it's crucial. One of the stories I usually tell parents in this space when I have these conversations, I've actually built 2 agents that I use personally. One is an agent that is a father and a therapist, and that's how I actually talk to my 23-year-old daughter and my 27-year-old son, because if I just text them as me, they don't respond. I usually get no kind of conversation whatsoever. But you know, when I use my AI agent to talk to them, they actually respond and we have great conversations. So for me, it actually enables me to understand their world a little bit more, and actually get a conversation and keep my relationship with them versus them shutting down. You know, and I've had conversations with principals that look at AI as cheating and then find out that they've never used it. So, you know, sitting alongside a bunch of teachers and principals in a room and taking them through some stuff to help them address the fears and kind of humanize the technology a little bit so that you understand how it actually can help versus only hurt. So, you know, a lot of us at the company have experience in that space. And so it really is just a matter of understanding again so that we can walk alongside you, bring the right folks to the room and have these kind of conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Brad Hall, president of Blackfeet Community College, one of the 7 tribal colleges in Montana.
Oh, you're on.
You're on. Yeah. Okay. So we all know that AI is here and that it's going to be expanded throughout industries across the state. But I saw the research component that you mentioned on one of your slides. What portion of that energy could be put toward looking at the implementation of data centers where they're sustainable and where we are in a position where the environment and other factors that people are concerned about can be better understood. Right now in the political landscape, it's seen as very toxic, and it's also a lot of misinformation out there. But most of the information is based on the experiences of other states and other areas around the world. So can you kind of address that sustainability part and how we can both have AI in our workspaces, store the data that we need to function, and also maintain that we have a beautiful state that has a lot of natural resources that may be compromised due to some of the things that have been said about AI implementation in data centers?
Yeah. So I'm going to first start by saying that's way above my pay grade, but I can tell you some of this. I know that Jensen and the company are really really trying to be thoughtful when it comes to our technology and the environment. Climate is one of Jensen's big interest areas. Which is why he actually authorized the development of our Earth 2 models so that we can actually look at climate the past 40 years and start predicting and helping communities predict the next 40 years. So that's part of the simulated environment that we have. It's called Earth 2 as in our digital twin. So right now we've gotten it so that we work with weather predictions down to 2 kilometers from where a storm is going to hit. We can look at different kind of environmental we can help predict what kind of environmental changes are coming. So in that vein, one of our technologies, the Vera Rubin chip, actually is cooled by hot water, not by cold water. So it starts reducing climate impact that way. Some of our other technologies are looking at how to reuse and repurpose energy in a different way. So understand that from NVIDIA's perspective, while we don't build data centers, we want to make sure that our technology is not detrimental in a way that goes against what Jensen thinks about climate and preserving Earth. So it's just know that it's one of those things that's top of mind for Jensen. I think when communities think about data centers, I have to keep my NVIDIA hat on, so I'm not going to go into my government hat. But I think there's different conversations that need to be had with data center providers that don't just lean towards the short-term economic benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'd like to open it up for those board members online, and I believe Chair Gilbertson has a question for you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Louis, wanted to just draw your attention. The federal government over the last 18 months or so has really put a priority on registered apprenticeships and has done a couple of unique things with states. One, the first one being an advanced manufacturing apprenticeship award to the state of Arkansas. That award is helping drive new career paths in advanced manufacturing, but it's not only tied to Arkansas. It's a national program that everyone has a potential to be a partner in. They also recently announced a couple of new ones in shipbuilding, in the transportation infrastructure of the country here in the last month. And the state of Montana, in partnership with the Associated General Contractors and the Equipment Dealers Association on a national level, are about to submit a program in construction. And we think with what NVIDIA is doing in the data center work, the partnership with SoftBank and the Stargate project that's going on around the country, there may be opportunity to partner in that effort as we submit that. Montana is going to be the managing director, and maybe a little background for you. I'm the senior vice president of RDO Equipment Company. We're the largest John Deere dealer in the United States. And John Deere obviously is quite a partner of NVIDIA's in the chip space. So, but wanted to make you aware that we're in the process of putting that together. We expect to submit it to DOL sometime in the next couple of weeks, and maybe an opportunity to partner together.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So NVIDIA doesn't do apprenticeships in that way, but what we do is work with folks that help place students, learners into apprenticeships. And so what we've done in the past again is that collaborative learning model where we'll help train people up so that they're actually more knowledgeable going into an apprenticeship because they have a better understanding how AI is impacting that industry. And that's kind of where we play. Some of our other colleagues, especially on the energy side, actually work with industry directly. So as apprenticeship programs get stood up, they will bring industry to the table that actually do apprenticeships, so that there's a chance for placement. So we're trying to get our sea legs, as you say, in the apprenticeship space. But it right now it is more of a coordination and it's more of a coordination effort than actual involvement. So when I talked about the statewide MOU, stuff like that can be included in the MOU where we figure out the words to make it so that we can play in that space, because it's just not something that's done naturally at NVIDIA. But we can absolutely incorporate that kind of language into something that we do across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Yep,
I
thank
think we have one more, we're looking at the time, so we have one more question that we'd like to submit. And this is from Kyla Owen from the governor's office.
Okay, thank you for being here with us. I really appreciate it. I think I'll have to schedule some time with you to answer some more questions.
Yep.
But one of the things I'm wondering is basically a logistics question. So what does it look like for our state? You made reference to an MOU. Is this a financial investment we're gonna have? What would the public facing, what would they see as far as, oh, NVIDIA is working for Montana, I wonder how much money that costs us, and what kind of thing is this gonna look like for our state?
Yeah, so that's a way bigger question, but all of the MOUs that we build, there is no financial commitment. It's really an orienting document, so that what we talk about is bringing subject matter experts to the table. What we talk about is a different kind of training we could do. Usually we try to do kind of a three-part. So it's NVIDIA, the state, and the higher education institutions, with K-12 kind of mentioned throughout, so that we can tie the whole ecosystem together. It talks about, because we can't do everything ourselves, but we would look at the industry partners, we'd look at the government to bring people to the table for these conversations, for these trainings, for that kind of stuff, so that we can actually have deliverables and impact over a 5-year period. But happy to share some of our other MOUs. Most of them are public, but I am happy to share those so that you can actually see kind of the frameworks, whether it be the Utah one, the Mississippi one. I'd hesitate to give you the California one just because anyway, that's a different story. The Oregon one, so we have different models. We try to make them state specific, and each state comes with kind of their own approach to these partnerships. But ultimately, it's a way for us to organize NVIDIA to show up as one NVIDIA, as opposed to a bunch of disparate conversations in and around your state. And it allows you to actually have measurable outcomes over the term of the collaboration.
Louis, this is Commissioner Swanson again. Thank you so much for joining our State Workforce Board today. I'm going to play off of your last comment that your goal is to show up as one NVIDIA. And that was really our goal of bringing you here to talk to this group today, is so that we can show up as one Montana. We uniquely operate, as you know, as one statewide workforce board, led with the AI efforts by our team at the department. I appreciated your colleagues pointing out to us the last time we met that 406 jobs may be among the most significant and bold workforce and education aligning strategies. And that's really thanks to the great people around this room. So thanks for giving them some of your time. We do believe that Montana is the best environment to pilot anything at scale. And we are so excited to move this forward with you. Thanks for spending some time with our board members. I know there's a few stakeholders in the room that would likely want to be involved with following up when the department meets with you next, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity and hopefully you guys have a great rest of the summer.
So since I'm chair, I do have one follow-up question. And I would like to ask Representative Stevens-Crowe this question. I know in the last legislature, we had the Right to Compute Act, which was very, very thoughtful and very ahead of the times. And so I'm just wondering, as we prepare for the 2027 legislature, the federal government right now isn't giving us a lot of direction in regards to laws around AI. I'm just curious, has there been conversation legislatively and how we're going to move forward as a state with laws that we're going to, I'm assuming, going to need in regards to the AI coming into the state of Montana?
Well, that's a broad question. And do you really want your legislature involved in that, right? I mean, just as citizen legislators involved, and plus there's a huge discussion going on about data centers, which seems to encompass the whole AI thing, right? I mean, you can't talk about one without the other. And that's very big and broad as well, because I think that the discussions going on around that are not really dealing with the issues, it's dealing more with the emotion. And I understand that. I mean, all politics are personal. I do sit on the Energy Task Force, which is energy and technology. Right now, I'm not hearing anything specifically going in that direction, one way or the other, either to expand, I mean, the right to compute was there, or to further close it up in our state. So I think that's a good thing, but I think it's really important for people to realize the potential, the possibility, also the dangers, and to keep yourself aware of that and not put it in the hands of somebody like me to determine that for you or for your families as well. I would say if you want to screw something up, give it to a legislator. Sarah's nodding over there. So is Scott, I can hear. And thank you too for working with me on everything that I do. But that's my answer to, and being very non-answering. So be involved, talk to your legislators, and understand that this issue is so huge.
Thank you, Representative, for letting me put you on the spot. Just curious if there was any rumblings going on, because I'm sure there will be. Great. So we will move forward. We have an AI priority that Jason's going to give us an update on. And so I will welcome you to either come up or you can stay there, whatever you'd like to do.
Thanks, Heather. Good morning, everyone. So we did an AI panel last board meeting at MSU, where we kind of took a sampling of what was happening in the region with respect to AI. And AI is a rapidly developing space. So as such, between then and now, a lot has happened. So today I have the pleasure of having with me Kate Case, a community leader actively working in AI here in Missoula. And over the next hour and 15 minutes, my hope is we'll do a state of the state report for what's happening in AI, and then a fireside chat with Kate, and then we'll open it up to a Q&A. So I'd like to start by welcoming Kate to join us today. Thank you. Kate serves as the Chief Operating Officer at Creighton Consulting and sits at the intersection of strategy and execution, helping organizations navigate complex operational shifts. At Creighton, she leads an effort to optimize workforce, integration, emerging technologies, and build high-performing teams. Her expertise is exactly what we're discussing here in AI over the past few months. And I'm pleased to have her with us here today. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Jason, for having me. It's a privilege to be here with all of you, and thank you for your time and attention this morning.
I would add that I'm not an expert in AI, right? I think we've got a lot of loud and confident voices, and I think it's important to center those in the area of expertise where they're coming from and the type of AI that they're talking about. So a little bit of background on Craton Consulting. The name comes from geology. It's a reference to one of the most stable layers of the Earth's core. We believe that amid dynamic changes in technology and the global economy, there are some consistent and stable things that remain true. That was the origin story. So my co-founder, Tom Sturgis, was not able to be here today, so you get me instead. So thank you. In our work, we focus on precision advisory and software solutions in revenue operations. So it's professional services work. We work with global companies ranging from startups to large enterprises. And that's given us a firsthand seat to how AI is fundamentally changing the way knowledge work is done. At the same time, a lot of our work is deeply rooted here in Montana. Over the last decade, we have developed and built on our university partnerships, namely here at and both Tom and I are board members with the Montana High Tech Business Alliance. The Alliance has a 501c3 nonprofit that leads their public benefit programming, largely around workforce, and I chair that board. So the comments that I give today will be from both of those perspectives.
And the High Tech Business Alliance just did an announcement today about a new report.
That's right. So many of you are familiar with the great work coming out of the Bureau of Business and Economic Research here at BBER. We have recently published a high-tech industry survey. I believe it's available online. Perhaps we can share the link out after this, but some interesting findings. And, you know, I'm a grateful transplant. I've been in Montana since 2012. In my work with the Alliance, as I get to know rural and tribal areas, tech has a role in everything that we do, from agriculture to advanced manufacturing to higher education. We are working with technology to do our jobs, but there's very often misunderstanding, couple AI on top of that, some of the concerns that have come out already, so we can explore some of those topics. In this report, and what I'm encouraged to share is that there is really great optimism about the role that technology can play in helping Montanans participate in innovation economy, stay in rural and tribal Montana where they want to make their lives, and be able to command a salary that's at 2.4 times our state average. And so lots of positive impact as long as we make sure we're spreading out accessible access to jobs of the future.
Yeah, I think the report had a section where they talked about 3.6 to 5% expansion in technology in Montana's GDP from 2014 to 2024. So yeah, we can certainly send out that report here later today. Well, let me switch to kind of a state of the state. And I want to paint real quick, a quick Venn diagram. So hopefully we can follow the same pathway as I'm thinking. So sometimes I tend to go off on tangents. We're going to talk about AI. The AI exists with data centers. So we want to talk about what's happening in data centers in Montana and in the region of the Pacific Northwest. Also, we're going to talk briefly about quantum, what's happening in that space, because that Venn diagram overlaps with AI in data center as well. Then I want to go through some recent changes that we're seeing. And change might not be the right word. It's hard to interpret what the administration in Washington is doing and the signaling of that. And then we'll discuss about one of the largest data centers in the Pacific Northwest that's going up right now for $13 billion by Meta. And that's Canadian, by the way. And then the governor just signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. How many of you saw that? The Ratepayer Protection Pledge? 1, 2. So just to make sure I get this correct, the Ratepayer Protection Pledge specifically says AI data centers will be required to fully pay for new power generation and infrastructure. So that's saying if we're gonna develop these capabilities in the region, the expectation is that those data centers will handle their own infrastructure. Wonder what that means to today. I think you mentioned this morning, there was even a report or a news article.
Well, it's certainly getting national attention. Montana is grappling with balancing risk and opportunity along with the rest of the nation. As we understand our infrastructure needs, balancing the demands of the grid and the citizens, and our obligation to understand the opportunity that comes with this new technology. And so the report that I was referencing is actually my husband is a professor of law here at UM and was contacted by a New York Times reporter based on this data center that's proposed in eastern Montana, where you've got, a town with maybe 10 individuals who are actively discussing the plans, the risk, the opportunity, demand on the grid, what went from 1 to 7-fold increase in demand, and then how that impacts the farming and ranching communities that are surrounding it. And so I'm certainly not an expert in infrastructure, but what I do believe is that with the power of these new technologies, we can design solutions that can balance our competing needs. I'm continually optimistic, evidenced by the individuals and leaders in this room, that Montana has a history and the partnerships and networks in place now to make decisions about how we steward our natural resources while also leading when it comes to innovation.
Well, let's look at that for a sec and just kind of summarize. I may miss one, so if I do, one or two, forgive me. There was a letter of intent in the Great Falls area with TAC. That was going to be a 600 megawatt data center. I believe that is no longer moving forward. There was a letter of intent in Butte with Savvy for data center that was smaller, 50 megawatt, then moved to 250 megawatt. I believe that is also not moving forward. There was a letter of intent for Billings, Quantica, and you're exactly right. It started at 1.1 gigawatt and now has moved up to 7.2 gigawatt. And so questions of how is that going to move forward? And then yet another letter of intent in Butte with Atlas, starting at 75 gigawatt and already moving toward 150 megawatt. So we see this trend across the region here in Montana, but it's not just Montana. There's reasons why this is happening in our area. One is, of course, access to power. The second, access to water, space, and the temperature in our region. So just last week, I had the opportunity to attend and participate in the PNWAR, Pacific Northwest Economic Region Annual Conference in Edmonton. U.S. Ambassador opened up the event. We had the Premier of Alberta and one of them present, and we talked specifically about the Meta project, which is a 13 billion Canadian hyperscale data center that's going in just outside of Edmonton. Things that make sense, they're going to do off-grid power. 2, it's further north, so it's cooler. 3, the industry they're going in was already slated, or region they're going in was already slated for heavy industry, so it fits in the space that it's going in. But as we look at that, that's, as a crow flies, only 300 miles, just over 300 miles from the border of Montana. So this is a question we're going to have to. So I don't think this is a question that's going to go away. We're going to see more and more of this here in Montana. And data centers, and as I talked about at the beginning, the Venn diagram, have AI. You need access to a data center. So while I was in Edmonton, I asked the question, this is great that you're going to have this huge data center here, but you realize there's no data sovereignty with that data center. That data center is owned by a foreign entity for Canada, which is Meta. What does that mean for Canada if they use that infrastructure in their industry, in their healthcare system, in their agriculture? Could be here today and one day gone because of tensions politically. So I brought up the topic of sovereign AI or sovereign data centers. And we talked about this briefly. What does sovereign data mean to you?
Well, that's the question of the hour, isn't it? You know, I think when I think about these things, and again, you know, I'm developing my perspective every day, and I think Montana should be a leader, but we should learn from the early adopters and design solutions that protect our way of life, our business development and opportunity here, and the data that we rely on to do our jobs across these various industries that we've talked about earlier this morning. And so what data sovereignty means to me is that we are aware and compliant in terms of how we're using AI interfaces to store, archive, and interact with massive data sets. And then moreover, how Montana, via collaboration, via public-private collaboration that we see as evident from this meeting, defining where we are in the value chain, how we want to participate both in innovative infrastructure and in the use cases of applied AI across various industries.
Yeah, I was in a CEO roundtable here recently where one of the CEOs, and this was in the defense space, said, I want to use AI, but I can't because I'm an ITAR compliant organization. And in fact, that group, one of our members, had reached out to Microsoft, this was some time ago, and said, you have now integrated Copilot as part of your operating system. We can't have Copilot as part of our operation. Can you develop a custom Microsoft implementation without Copilot so we can protect what? Our data. Now, across the table, another CEO disagreed. It was an interesting conversation. That CEO said, well, you can implement AI, but you have to control your data. What that company did is they introduced their own LLM. That company is working in the gas detection in the energy space, which also is very tightly controlled. Data hygiene is very important in our energy space for compliance with CMMC. What they did is they established within the organization their own data center. And that allowed them to scale rapidly. The previous year before that, that company hired almost 100 employees here in Montana. And the primary function, not all of them, but many of them, was data analytics. Because of that, they were able to look at the problem set, and they actually brought people from a different state to Montana to develop the LLM. And they were able to automate the data analytics from the advanced sensor in the space of gas detection. That company is scaling rapidly, has 8 of 10 of the largest petroleum companies on the planet as customers, is on 3 continents already. So AI is moving from, and this is one of the conversations we want to have, from being, let's take existing processes and make them more efficient, to being core to what we do as an organization. So when Kate and I were talking, she had a phrase that she used, an ethos per se, that really resonated with me. And let me just read it as we launch into this fireside. Data centers, let me see right here. Yeah, here we go. The challenge AI presents is not fundamentally a technology challenge. It's a workforce challenge. And Montana has repeatedly demonstrated that we know how to bring together people from different backgrounds, perspectives, and expertise to solve problems larger than any one organization can solve on their own. So my question for you, Kate, is you've noted that AI challenge is fundamentally about technology, it's about people. When leadership stops viewing AI as an IT project and starts viewing it as a workforce transformation, how does that change the way we approach the training, the development? How do we shift from a passive classroom to an applied real-world execution? What does that look like?
Thank you. I have some opinions, and I'm sure you all do in the room too, so I look forward to hearing your questions as we wrap up this session. I also appreciated Lewis's very human perspective, right? I think we share this. There is a technology element
And then there's a people element and we need to bridge the gap. And so, you know, I try to refrain from certainty, but I tend to frame things on what I know, what I believe to be true, and then what I think, and sometimes what I wonder what we can do together. So what I know and what I can imagine that we can all in this room agree on is that AI is fundamentally shifting the way we learn, the way work gets done, and the way value is created inside organizations across sectors. I know that the biggest risk we face is not wholesale job loss, but rather the accelerating skills gap. I know this because national research confirms again and again that the skills gap is the one we need to close. And so in terms of actionable insights or workforce development, gathering diverse people around a table to talk about their industry, what's happening in their industry, bringing the domain expertise that cannot be automated out to bear to talk about the outcomes that you need for your patients, for your childcare workers, for our tribal colleges. What are the outcomes that we need to achieve? And how is this new tool impacting our ability to get to those outcomes? There is a place for classroom learning. And I think a lot of when I encounter, we realize this issue is polarizing, right? And I understand the concern. And depending on where you fall on the spectrum, you believe that this AI opportunity is unprecedented and will fundamentally improve and change our quality of life, or you believe it's an existential threat. And many people who I speak with that fall in the latter category don't necessarily know what they're talking about when they say AI. When I question, tell me your experience with AI. Tell me, you know, there's this kind of conflation of big tech and data centers and AI, and I get it. When there is massive disruption and change and people feel their agency and opportunity is at risk, there is kind of wholesale rejection that's fear-based. And what I really would like to encourage us to do is think through, you know, where people are on the spectrum of awareness and literacy. I think AI literacy is a baseline skill, just as we spent a lot of time talking about digital literacy when we went from ledgers, you know, back to from the calculator to desktop computers to email to
Excel.
exactly. And, you know, in my industry, back to your sovereign data centers and confidentiality and who controls the data, you know, everything was built on-prem. It's called on-premise software, and a lot of it was customized. And, you know, then we went to the floppy disk, and, you know, bear with me, but there are these steps in evolution of not only technology, but how that technology impacts how work is done. And this is a leap. This is a massive leap that requires us to compare notes on what's working and what isn't. And so the baseline step is literacy. What are we talking about when we say AI? Are we talking about a large language model? We're talking about a small language model? Are we talking about a free version of ChatGPT that you're using in your browser? Are we talking about an enterprise-grade version of Copilot that has, you know, the safety and privacy mechanisms built in, that's endorsed by your organization? To your great question earlier on governance, how do we roll this out? Who gets access? But more importantly, how are we working together to bring people up to speed on the use cases today? And because this technology is changing so quickly, what we anticipate use cases might be tomorrow.
So I understand there's been several conversations that's happened here in the community, a couple at Bonner, one here at the university. What are you hearing on that spectrum from people in the community? What are you hearing from friends and family and others?
Well, it's interesting, Jason. I was talking when you called me yesterday afternoon to ask that I share some perspective. In my own industry, in professional services and technology consulting, there are a lot of individuals who are very outspoken about and again, I think this goes back to the agency element. Do I have control over my future in this role, over the outcomes that I'm demanding in my job, and over the conservation, stewardship, use of the resources in the place that I love to live, work, and recreate? And so I don't know if I'm surprised or not, right? I mean, we have the 4 individuals who work in technology. There have been some who are very outspoken about their opposition to data centers, and that just grounds me in our ability to calmly understand the facts, talk about where we are now in terms of sustainable infrastructure. Brad Hall, to your excellent point earlier, what exists today? How are we building things? What are the risks and concerns we have around resources, water, demand? We're talking about closed loop systems. And I think when fear and uncertainty are the loudest voices in the room, we have an obligation as industry and public leaders to bring us back to what are we actually talking about? What compromises are we willing to make? And where do we want to say Montana will lead?
Up in Edmonton, when they were talking about the new metadata center, they introduced 2 new concepts. The premier did a wonderful job, the premier in Alberta, articulating it so that it was understandable by the audience. That data center will be a closed loop data center. And just real quick, how many have heard the term closed loop data center? I just want to see. So more than half, excellent. The unit of measure they introduced for a 1.8 gigawatt, and that'll be the full expansion, 1.1 rolling up to 1.8 gigawatt, was 1 golf course of water. That data center will use the same as a golf course of water. And I can tell you, between Calgary and Edmonton, I was surprised. It went farmland, farmland, golf course, RV park, farmland, farmland, golf course, RV park, as we drove across from east to west. And people understood that. They're accepting of a golf course in their community because they can relate, it's already there. The data center is new, and sometimes that new is perceived as a fear-based perception. The second unit of measure that they introduced is that in that ecosystem with Edmonton, natural gas is one of the main exports. At times, natural gas goes negative in its worth. They have to pay people to take it. And bringing in an industry that will use natural gas, and this one will be off-grid, brings a foundation to the community so that they're more immune to the changes in price and structure. So the way they articulated that is they want to move up the value chain and begin exporting not just natural gas, but exporting zeros and ones. A different way to look at it. Same concept. How do we use natural gas in a way with the data center? But we're not exporting just natural gas. We're moving up the value chain. And when they talked about the worth of natural gas versus 0 and 1, it was several orders of magnitude up the value chain. Calculation that they had done, that's how they're talking about it within their community. But closed loop data centers are the next evolution. We're seeing them roll out. But I can tell you, I've talked to legislators here in Montana that have flown out to see other data centers across the United States that aren't using closed loop, to see how it's harming the local community, and by harm, preventing them from innovating quickly because it is using water, it is using power. In fact, we just hired an employee out of a Midwest state that isn't moving forward right now because the data centers have consumed a lot of the power and water. So when we look at Montana and we look at AI, yes, we do need access to sovereign data, but we need to make sure it scales for what we need for the state. That metadata center, I can tell you, that is not just domestic for Canada, that's definitely international. Well, Katie, let's keep going down the pathway of companies in Montana and specifically we talked about some large organizations, but what about smaller teams? A lot of organizations make the mistake of just layering new software on top of decades-old processes. When we have something we do, we just want to make it more efficient. True transformation happens when you redesign how you get work done. So how can not our large billion-dollar companies, but our small Montana companies, our local governments, re-engineer their workflows so that small teams, 5, 10 people, can accomplish what used to take 20, 50 people?
It's such an important question. My background, is in social sciences. I joke that I'm finding new and exciting ways to apply my anthropology degree in the technology sector. Most of my life, I've been in customer and partner facing management and service roles. I found my way to technology about 10 years ago when I moved to Missoula. And I am grateful for that experience because it's resulted in me being able to sit here today and share my perspective, but also because that job was the first job where I had healthcare benefits, right? And that's life-changing for many people. And so I'm using now my own experience in this platform to make sure that we are dotted lining out some of the productivity savings, some of the safety and risk concerns to the individuals who need them most, which are our small businesses in Montana. There's great work happening that I can only speak to at a high level in terms of grant and financial management for our farmers and agriculture workers. That gives me great hope. That gains can be seen there. I'll speak on behalf of my own organization right now. So I came from Cognizant, which is a Fortune 200 company that has an office headquartered here in Missoula. At the time that I was leading operations there, we had about 350 local headcount and a robust partnership with the University of Montana, resulted in a training program. It's a huge organization, a lot's changed, right? Like with many enterprise organizations, there's a tightening of the belt, there's kind of a restructuring of entry-level hiring. I had a very interesting transition moving out of that role and joining Tom Sturgis to launch Kraton, which is now 3 full-time employees. But for the first 6 months, it was just the 2 of us. And so I can say that I'm not only the leader of a small business, but also a startup. And in that environment, AI has played a massive role in how work gets done with our business. And so I'll do the service of identifying what we're using. And so early on, we are Microsoft users. So a lot of the work in AI, I'm like, what systems are you already using? Is there an option that makes sense for you to work with AI productivity tools within the systems that you already have in your organization? And so Copilot was garbage for the first 3-6 months that we were using it.
That's documented.
Yeah. We would laugh and say, oh, and there's like an enterprise search feature that has been interesting where a lot of our work lives in Teams, lives in emails, lives in call transcripts. That was an early benefit. But and this is key, the technology is changing every day. Every day that I log in, there is a new capability, a new feature, enhanced outputs. And so my first bit of advice is explore in a safe way how it might work in your business, and then do it again tomorrow and do it again tomorrow and compare notes with those in different functions around you. Tom Sturgis is the founder and CEO of Kraton, and he uses his AI tools. We now have also incorporated Claude into our tool set, which has been mind-blowing. I think we've been on that journey for about 3 months. So behind a lot of other people who are using Claude, is anyone in this room using Claude today? Wild, and incredibly different than the Copilot tool that we've been leveraging. And so to sum it up, AI, in my view, amplifies labor. It does not replace labor, human judgment, taste, the voice of authority that you all have from being experts in your industry. is critical and will remain critical. AI as a tool to remove the friction in your day-to-day, give you more time to focus on the core human-to-human elements of your work, and relieve some of the administrative pressure, is the way that I see small businesses benefiting from this the most.
All right, so next question, right in that same vein, you mentioned how rapidly these tools are evolving. The shelf life of technical skills is shorter than ever. Education, industry, and workforce agencies can no longer afford to operate on separate, slow-moving timelines. I think, Joe, you mentioned last time the challenge with workforce curriculum because the technology is evolving so fast. How can employers and those you work with and education partners build tighter, continuous feedback loops so that their training programs evolve at the speed of business?
That is the opportunity before us. We must rise to meet it. And this is a great example of how that happens. I think, thank you for being here representing in the US. I'm deeply encouraged by our ability to organize and coordinate as a state. I think that is our competitive advantage. Our states, the university system as a whole, including our 7 tribal colleges and our 2-year colleges, have a huge role to play. But the promise to students has to change. And in order to meet the promise of you come here and receive an education that prepares you to enter the workforce readiness looks a lot different than it did when I was in college. And it will look even different next year. And so that requires tight collaboration loops with industry, whether that's in the classroom or providing opportunities for hands-on applied learning. A lot of this, again, is leveraging the tool to solve a problem. Which tool are you using? Is it the right one for the job? Do you understand how to prompt it effectively, give it the right resources to turn out the output that you require? Work looks different, and so preparing students for work looks different. That requires the diverse group of people who are here today to explore use cases within your industries and then make your partners in higher education aware of what's changing and how they can help in preparing students to come into those businesses with the adaptability, the ability to work in ambiguity, the ability to understand, what's required in a task and an output and iterate. The process has condensed.
We have some time before our last question, so I have permission to go off script. I cleared this in advance. How much time do you personally spend using the tool versus learning how the tool is evolving and then adapting your process? Just curious personally, because as the tools change, there's a learning curve to what does Claude do today that it didn't do yesterday.
100%. I really am a hands-on learner. So I will admit that I started Anthropics 101 courses and probably got about 30 minutes in before I abandoned them and went off on my own. And so I think and one of the things that I'm so encouraged about when it comes to AI as a tool for learning is that there are ways to meet a wide variety of learners. What your learning style is, if, for instance, English is your second language, if you have other ability considerations, this can be a really important equalizer in leveling the playing field for how individuals learn and work. So I will very often with Claude, for instance, use the chat or co-work interface to ask, here is the task that I would like to do. Tell me how you would approach it. What am I missing? I'll also use my Copilot tool, which knows me, right? I've trained, this is a strange world we're living in, right? But it has my knowledge base, it has my communication style, it has my role and responsibility set. And I'll say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish in Claude, which is a wildly different tool than Copilot, which is cloud-based. And my Claude application is largely like a desktop-based application. You feed it the resources. And I will ask Copilot to give me the prompt that I will then feed into a Claude project, right? This is the way that I learn, coupled with asking the individuals around me what they're doing, and inevitably, they're doing very different projects and use cases than I am. And I think that's where innovation is. It's not necessarily a brand new idea. It is an idea that exists within one structure being applied in a new way to another structure. So
Collaborating with colleagues, using one AI as a foil for another AI. So we're gonna have to move away from, I'm a Microsoft person, I'm a Google person. AI exists in a very different space. That collaboration, let's talk about that a bit. You emphasize that Montana's unique strength is our ability to bring diverse people and organizations together to tackle problems that no entity can solve alone. When you look at the board here and our statewide partners, what does truly collaborative, cross-sector Montana AI strategy look like from your perspective?
I think it's critical, and I think the work is already in flight. What we must do is assemble this network of partners that are statewide already, this board. In K through 12, we have Montana Digital Academy with the Frontier Learning Lab, empowering and equipping rural and tribal schools with curriculum, digital literacy, AI literacy. We have Montana World Affairs Council in that space, bringing awareness of what's happening around the world to Montana. We have our university system. We have Accelerate Montana. We have Photonics and Quantum Alliance, Bioscience Alliance, Montana High Tech Alliance, all of these industry associations that are gathering data in real time about the nature of work and what's changing, collaborating with government and higher education to inform what happens next. And so what I believe is Montana's strategic advantage is to operationalize the brilliant work that has been laid forth by this board and the governor for the 4-6 Jobs Initiative and organize around an AI-ready hub, as we talked about earlier, for this NSF opportunity.
Well, perfect. Let's talk about that NSF opportunity. So there was a tech ready proposal that was put together by the state, led by GLI. There were some technical challenges, so we weren't able to submit in round one. But there will be a round two, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's December?
Opens December, yes.
Opens December, and we will be applying for that. I do have a quick synopsis of what that entailed. Just let me read this real quickly. And in the same vein, instead of duplicating existing programs in the state, that AI project through the NSF would create a hub that serves as a neutral convener connecting workforce, education, industry, and tribal partners to integrate AI into real world workflows. It would be a 3-year project initially, though I think there's 1-year expansion that's possible. And it plans to train over 1,000 Montanans, supporting 100+ small businesses and agencies in AI, and launch an AI learning and resource navigator for over 10,000 users. We'll also build capacity in at least 5 tribal communities through design projects and establish a Montana AI deployment corps and produce a statewide AI readiness strategic plan. So there we go. This initiative aims to create a sustainable statewide infrastructure and a transferable coordination model for other rural and tribal states. Coming back to what Louis shared in his talk from the video, how can Montana be a leader in this space? So that was the NSF, and we'll be applying for that here later this year. Also mentioned there was another NSF award proposal that was due on Friday. This is called X Labs, and it's related in the AI data center side. I'll talk about this real briefly because I do want to leave time for questions. It appears there's been a shift in direction from the Trump administration over the last 3-4 months. And X Labs was the first round in that, where they announced the $1.5 billion project to develop quantum readiness, and it focused on 2 areas: quantum sensing and then quantum scalability. How do we make those quantum computers real for people today? Funded with $1.5 billion, and Montana submitted not 1, but 2 proposals for that. The exciting part is, if funded, those could be up to $150 million each over 3 years to significantly move the needle in that space. In that quantum space, we're already active in moving here in Montana. In fact, we were just asked, the MPQA was just asked by NASA to host an international quantum sensing conference here in Montana. That'll be through IEEE, focused on quantum sensing. So we're excited to move that, see that move forward. So we are seeing federal funding move into this space, whether NSF. A week and a half after X Labs was announced, the Trump administration invested not $1, but $2 billion directly into industry. IBM got 1. And 9 other companies got the remainder of the 1 billion. And I actually talked to Ben Bloom, the CEO of Atom Computing. He announced a $300 million raise, of which the US government took about a third of that, 100 million. So that was round 2. Round 3, Senator Steve Daines' staff reached out and asked me to be part of the CEO roundtable that was hosted by the Department of Energy. That was 5 hours long on a Friday. And that interviewed industry leadership from across the US. A week and a half later, the president signs not 1, but 2 executive orders focused on quantum. And who was in the room? It was industry. And so the way they're positioning is, and this comes back to X Labs. X Labs was unique in that it disallowed academia as academia and national labs to apply for the funding for those research developments. It was a very unique model. And we looked at this and said, well, what does that leave if our academic research institutions can't go after, our national labs can't? And the answer is industry. There's a strategic initiative that appears. When I was up in Canada, people push back on this. And I said, I can't predict or say this is signaling from DC. But this is what the pattern shows, is they want industry at the table because the rate of advancement, it's not an or function. It's not academia or research or industry. It's academia, it's national lab, and it's industry, which by the way, sounds very familiar what we hear from Governor Gianforte. It's all hands on deck because we're going to be part of this and not just follow, but lead. We need to get out in front, and industry is going to help us move forward quickly. Well, we have 10 minutes left. I'll open it up to questions from the board.
Real quick question. How's that Meta data center in Canada powered?
The Meta data center will be off grid natural gas.
So they have their own natural gas generator?
The answer is yes. And they have a challenge that they have an abundance of natural gas. So periodically, when the market dips and that goes negative, that's exceptionally problematic because what they don't want to be doing is turning on and off the gas extraction. Now they have a pathway to do it, and it is on grid. There was a conversation later to say eventually they'll bring it on grid. So if that data center doesn't consume all of it, they can feed it back into the system. Other questions?
I have a quick one just related to that, and I actually have a different question, but for generators like that and some of this on-grid, off-grid discussion, is there any conversation about public-private partnership for the energy generation?
There's certainly many conversations about that. And let's look at Quantica specifically over by Billings. To bring, there's conversations, and I'm not an expert in that space. I can only share what I've seen in writing that's looking to be off-grid, but they would have to bring infrastructure to bring that natural gas, maybe a 24-inch pipe to that site. That's hundreds of miles. That's very expensive. So in Canada, the answer is they signed something similar to what Governor Gianforte did here a few weeks ago. Meta will cover the cost of the infrastructure development. And that was a requirement for that project. We look at Wyoming. Wyoming has several large data centers going in. They've done a public-private partnership. So both models exist.
And then my question is for you guys and possibly for Joe as well, but when I look at the higher ed partnership and then some of the AI hub that you're speaking of, kind of like my question for Lewis, I see in industry, in AI adoption, there's the gap of governance and just helping educate business owners on how to implement this. And what I think of is similar to like what Patty Plumbing does with NMEC. How can there be a team, and we're utilizing them right now for lean manufacturing and prefabrication. And based on how it's subsidized, it's fantastic and cost effective for us to use NMEC. Whether it's through something similar or this AI hub, that would be a significant benefit. Then the next step in that I also don't know that we have addressed, and maybe this is down the line for higher ed, but if organizations like mine then are implementing, and actually, in fact, we're rolling out a department within our company at the first of the year that is technology and autonomy. So we have specific industrial engineers that are just focused on implementation. But my first hire, who is that? Is it a computer science graduate? Is it being able to clarify someone who can come in and help us implement things to the next level would be a big advantage.
Joe, you want to take this one?
You want to start? And then I'll
Yeah.
follow.
It's not great enough. My comment is that, first off, it is such an important question. I think that, your industry and the demands of the job, but bringing alongside young people who have experience using these tools, who have curiosity and some experience. And the question that we get all the time in our workforce development programming is, all of the jobs I'm applying for require 3 to 5 years of experience. And here I am graduating college and I can't get hired anywhere to get that critical experience. How do we do that? And so especially in construction or other skilled trades, having on the job training programs, apprenticeship programs that develop a pipeline of people who can learn from individuals who've been doing this work and have the domain experience, have the problem solving on the go experience that they can shadow and then bring their new skills to bear is critical. There's a role there. Curious your thoughts.
Yeah. I think within higher ed, we're dealing with some of the same challenges that companies are dealing with, in that there's a phase from AI skeptics or more than skeptics, all the way up to more than early adopters to, researchers pushing the edge of how these tools are used. And some of our focus has been just this realization that there needs to be adoption of AI across the curriculum. And that means both dealing with how students know how to use these tools, but also how they're critical users of the tools, understanding some of the risks and benefits. And that's a big challenge when you're talking about 4,000 faculty members across the state, to get them exposed, to get them thinking, to have the curriculum resources. So part of where we're thinking about that is our own internal governance models of how do we set and define some of those topics? How do we get broad exposure to the folks who are now expected to incorporate that in curriculum? And then how do we have that in other parts of the institution that are more on the outreach side? Like we have, ag experiment centers, ag extension here at this institution, who partnerships with Kraton and the Future Project, offering online open enrollment, free, come explore AI with us, opportunities to businesses on the books around the state, which I have actually benefited from. So, I think that there's a lot of exploration and thought going there. Part of the AI opportunity is to say, how are we connecting the right folks in the right industries or the right students to the opportunities that do exist around the state? And then how do we learn from that process to, okay, maybe what are the MEC style subsidies or programs that we need to put longer term? And then internal to the university system, we adopted the Department of Labor's framework on basic AI literacies. how are we doing that? And how are we measuring that? And how are we communicating with, intentionally with some faculty and others who are rightfully or wrongfully skeptical, but need to engage with it well so that it's part of the curriculum, so that students are not only exposed, but become knowledgeable. And part of my thought on this front is, at least in the most immediate generation, folks are going to be looking for new college grads who maybe were exposed through their curriculum and maybe are, on that forefront of AI literacy, to come in and say, oh, okay, you know this better than I do. How should this transform our business? And how do we put students in that mindset of saying, take this experience, do that internship, work with these groups, because that's going to be a differentiator for you when you're applying for jobs.
One caution, Josh, and Tom and I discussed this yesterday. Workforce coming in hopefully has AI awareness, exposure, some skills, but there are a lot of organizations that are reaching out into Montana, whether it's email, LinkedIn, saying they're AI experts and they want to partner with companies to develop their readiness plan, implementation. And if you look underneath the hood, it's one person who hasn't been fully employed for 2 years, who took an AI class and is now marketing. And Tom used the term snake oil. So we do need to be cautious in this space of organizations positioning that their one-stop shop can solve all your AI needs. And as Montana evolves, as our workforce develops this skill set, this talent, will become more resilient. But just a word of caution out there when organizations are presenting themselves, and Tom says he sees this almost daily.
Well, and I think something to add to that as well is that the culture of the organization, if it's resilient, it means that leaders have enough awareness of what AI is to have some frame of reference for how it might be applied. It has to be top down and bottom up. There has to be, here is the ethos of the organization. Here's the safeguards and the non-negotiables. Here's how we want you to explore. And here's the, permission you have to explore within this environment. We'll compare notes on what leadership is doing. I mean, it can't be passive. Come in and influence this. It has to be the culture of the organization, understanding, combining that domain expertise that's put you where you are with permission for young people who have literacy to be the seed of innovation that challenges the way work has historically been done.
Jason, we have a question online from one of our board members. Superintendent Handelman, I believe, had a question. I wanted to make that like your hand up, but now it's down. I'm going to provide you the opportunity if you have a question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate what has been shared. It was very informative, and I just got a magazine delivered on data centers, Jason. So I will get up to speed, but thank you for the updates. And also talking about education, I just left the school administrators conference, and Jason Neifer from Montana Digital Academy was doing a breakout session with the school leaders preparing for next school year on best practices and making sure that our students are using those critical thinking skills as they utilize AI, as well as thinking about how we can be innovative in using it in our classrooms and to prepare students for the next steps. So I appreciated the last comments. I believe that was Joe as well. And just definitely want to continue ensuring we can all collaborate on the AI guidance through Digital Academy and see where that fits into kind of the next steps that SWIB takes in moving forward. And just want to make sure that we're all working in the same direction and keep everyone in the loop. So I think that it's exciting that there's so much energy around this, and a really great opportunity to partner that you just mentioned on that grant opportunity. So however we can collaborate and include Digital Academy in the Commissioner of Higher Ed's office, and so we can make sure we stay up to speed in preparing our students and our college educator prep programs and others would be excellent.
Thank you very much for that. And I couldn't agree more. You have a very, there was a sage thing that was shared there about how others in the region are doing that, whether Pacific Northwest or nationally. I got to tour the University of Alberta here on Thursday last week, met with their president. He offered to share the curriculum that they've developed for K through 12 through the university. This is not something we need to do and reinvent the wheel. There are others working on this. What a wonderful opportunity to find collaboration both statewide and regionally, and maybe even nationally, internationally. We are over time, so I do want to be sensitive, but I'll defer to Heather. We have one more question.
My question regarding the energy costs. So our cooperative has upped our cost 6% in the last year. And what they're telling us is that it's a supply issue because of the oncoming growth in Western Montana, where we get a lot of our power from. So you also hear the concept of power being taken away from communities to service these data centers. And is the approach going to be diversified to include renewables, or where are we at with that? Because I know we have the oil, I know we have the energy sources, but when we think about the needs of communities, they may want different solutions.
So I wish Paul was here, and I don't know if Paul's online with us or not, but his role in energy would be the best to address that. He and I did chat, and he said he was disappointed he couldn't be part of this conversation. It's not an or, it's gonna have to be an and. Up in Edmonton, I used to be a radiation safety officer with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Obviously, nuclear comes up again and again. And then so in asking the question up there with the Meta Center, which is natural gas, I asked, are you looking at geothermal? Are you looking at nuclear? And the answer was yes, yes, and yes. The growth in data and demand for data is exceeding energy capacity at this time. So regions that have energy are going to attract the data centers. Regions that have access to data, AI, are going to innovate faster. I will say though that in the data center space, that cost, and just the ballpark it, for a data center to be profitable, they need somewhere between 6 and 7 cents for a kilowatt hour. To break even, it's about 8 to 11. Above 11 cents a kilowatt hour, they're not making money. So if we look at our cost for energy in Montana, that's what those data centers are looking for. And if we don't have that, then that's not of interest to them at this time. And I'm sure Paul would be glad to have a conversation with you about that in further detail. Well, we are out of time, so would you please join me in taking
Thank you again. This was really good conversation. So we're gonna take an hour-long lunch break. We're gonna come back at 12:30. So the lunch is available already out there. Please be back in your seats at 12:30 so we can be already done with our day. Thank you so much.